The autumn wind whistled through the pines as Marcus Thornfield adjusted his worn flannel shirt and stepped into the crowded town square. After 3 years of solitary life in his mountain cabin, the annual harvest festival felt overwhelming. The chatter of families, the laughter of children, and the warm glow of lanterns reminded him of everything he'd been missing since Sarah passed away. At 34, Marcus had grown accustomed to the company of tall trees and the rhythmic sound of his axe splitting wood. His calloused hands, broad shoulders, and unkempt beard spoke of a man who worked hard and lived simply. The townspeople knew him as the reliable lumberjack who delivered firewood without fail, but few knew the gentle soul beneath his rugged exterior. The evening's entertainment was the annual charity auction, where local businesses and residents donated items to raise money for the church roof repairs. Marcus had contributed a cord of seasoned oak, though he hadn't planned to stay for the bidding. Something about the festive atmosphere, however, made him linger near the back of the crowd. Mayor Henderson's booming voice carried across the square. As he auctioned off quilts, preserves, and handmade crafts, the crowd grew more animated with each successful bid, their good-natured competition filling the air with excitement. Marcus found himself smiling despite his usual reserve, remembering how Sarah used to drag him to these very events. Then came the moment that would change everything. "Ladies and gentlemen," Mayor Henderson announced with theatrical flair, "we have here a most unusual offering. A mysterious woman has volunteered herself for a dinner date with the highest bidder. All proceeds going to our worthy cause. The only catch is that her identity remains secret until after the auction concludes." The crowd murmured with curiosity as a figure stepped onto the makeshift stage. She wore a simple blue dress that suggested a slender frame, but her entire head was covered by a burlap sack with holes cut out for her eyes. The unusual sight drew nervous laughter from some spectators and intrigued whispers from others. Marcus felt an unexpected tug in his chest. There was something about her posture, the way she stood with quiet dignity despite the absurd circumstances, that stirred something long dormant in his heart. Her hands, visible below the sack's edge, were graceful and appeared to belong to someone young. "Do I hear opening bids at 50 cents? Mayor Henderson called out. A few tentative hands went up. Marcus watched as the bidding climbed slowly. 75 cents. $1, $1.50. Several of the town's bachelors participated half-heartedly, more interested in the novelty than any serious courtship. The woman stood perfectly still throughout, her hidden gaze seeming to sweep across the crowd. As the bidding reached $1.75, Marcus felt compelled to act, without fully understanding why. He raised his weathered hand. $2, he called out, his deep voice carrying clearly across the square. The crowd turned to look at him with surprise. Marcus Thornfield, the hermit lumberjack, was bidding on a woman? Whispers rippled through the gathering as Mayor Henderson scanned for higher bids. $2 going once, going twice, sold to Marcus Thornfield. The gavel came down with finality, and Marcus felt his heart racing. What had he just done? He approached the stage with long, uncertain strides, very aware of the dozens of eyes following his movement. The mysterious woman turned toward him, and though he couldn't see her face, something in her posture suggested she was pleased with the outcome. "Congratulations, Marcus," Mayor Henderson said with a knowing grin. "Your dinner companion will reveal herself now, as is traditional." The woman's hands moved to the burlap sack, and the crowd held its collective breath. Marcus found himself holding his own breath as well, suddenly terrified and excited in equal measure. What if she was disappointed by her buyer? What if this had all been a terrible mistake? The sack came away, and cascading auburn hair caught the lantern light like burnished copper. The woman who stood before him was perhaps 28, with kind green eyes, a spray of freckles across her nose, and a smile that seemed to light up the entire square. She was beautiful, certainly, but it was the warmth in her expression that made Marcus's knees feel weak. But it was when she spoke that his world truly shifted. "Hello, Marcus," she said, her voice carrying the faintest trace of an Irish accent. "My name is Eleanor Rose O'Brien." The name hit him like a physical blow. Eleanor Rose, the name Sarah had always said she would give to their daughter, if they'd been blessed with one. It was a name they'd whispered together in the quiet moments before sleep, a name that represented all their hopes for a family that never came to be. Marcus stared at her, unable to speak. The coincidence seemed impossible, almost mystical. Around them, the crowd was beginning to disperse, their curiosity satisfied and attention moving to other festival attractions. But Marcus remained frozen, his mind reeling. "Are you all right?" Eleanor asked, her brow creasing with concern. "You look as though you've seen a ghost." Eleanor rose. He repeated softly, almost reverently. "Yes," she said, tilting her head. "Is something wrong with my name?" Marcus shook his head slowly, struggling to find words. "No, nothing wrong. It's a beautiful name. The most beautiful name I've ever heard." Eleanor's smile returned, tinged now with curiosity about this tall, intense man who had bid on her sight unseen. "Well then, Marcus Thornfield, shall we discuss this dinner you've won? I should mention that I'm not actually from around here. I'm just passing through town, staying at the boarding house while I decide where to settle. Mrs. Patterson convinced me to participate in the auction for the church fund." "Where are you from?" Marcus asked, finding his voice at last. "County Cork, originally, though I've been in America for 5 years now. I was married briefly. My husband died in a mining accident out in Colorado. I've been traveling since then, looking for somewhere that feels like home." The revelation that she was a widow, like him a widower, struck Marcus as another impossibility. Here was a woman who had also known loss, who understood the weight of solitude, and her name, Sarah's chosen name, felt like a message from beyond. "I'm sorry for your loss," he said quietly. "I lost my wife 3 years ago. I know how difficult it can be." Eleanor's expression softened with understanding. "Then you know why I put the sack over my head tonight. Sometimes it's easier to be anonymous, to start fresh without people's assumptions or pity." Marcus nodded. "I've been living alone in my cabin since Sarah died. This is the first time I've come to one of these festivals since then." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the bustle of the festival continuing around them. Finally, Eleanor spoke again. "So about this dinner, when would you like to collect on your $2 investment?" Marcus surprised himself by laughing. "Would tomorrow evening be too soon? I could cook for you at my cabin, if you're comfortable with that. I make a decent venison stew." "I'd like that very much," Eleanor said. "Mrs. Patterson can give you directions to where I'm staying. You can collect me at 6 o'clock. As they arranged the details, Marcus found himself studying Eleanor's face, memorizing every detail. The way she tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear when she was thinking, the way her green eyes sparkled when she smiled, the graceful way she moved her hands when she spoke. The next evening, Marcus found himself more nervous than he'd been since courting Sarah 15 years earlier. He'd spent the day cleaning his cabin, preparing the stew, and even trimming his beard. When he arrived at the boarding house in his cleanest shirt and most presentable trousers, Eleanor was waiting on the porch in a simple green dress that brought out her eyes. The dinner was a revelation. Eleanor was intelligent, well-read despite her limited formal education, and possessed a quick wit that kept Marcus laughing throughout the evening. She spoke of her travels, her dreams of finding a peaceful place to call home, and her love of books and music. Marcus found himself opening up in return, sharing stories of his life in the mountains, his work, and gradually, his memories of Sarah. "She sounds like she was a wonderful woman," Eleanor said when Marcus finished telling her about his late wife's passion for gardening. "She was," Marcus agreed. "I never thought I'd be able to talk about her with someone new. But somehow, with you, it feels natural." Eleanor reached across the table and touched his hand gently. "Grief shared is grief diminished. My grandmother used to say, 'Love remembered is love multiplied.'" That simple touch, those wise words, began the healing Marcus hadn't known he needed. Over the following weeks, Marcus found excuses to visit town more frequently. Eleanor had decided to extend her stay, finding work helping Mrs. Patterson with the boarding house. Their friendship deepened into something more profound with each conversation, each shared meal, each long walk through the changing autumn landscape. It was on one such walk, 6 weeks after the auction, that Marcus found the courage to speak his heart. "Eleanor Rose," he said, stopping beside the creek that ran near his property. I need to tell you something about your name." She turned to him with patient attention, her cheeks pink from the crisp October air. "Before Sarah died, we used to talk about having children. We never were blessed with any, but we had names picked out. For a daughter, Sarah always said she wanted Eleanor Rose. She said it was the name of an angel." Eleanor's eyes widened with